3 days in silence. The morning started like any other. The sky outside was gray, and the leaves in the garden moved slowly in the cold wind. Evelyn Moore sat by the window with a book open on her knees. She wasn't reading it. She was watching the gardener rake the wet leaves into a tired pile. At 9 o'clock, the head nurse, Mrs. Carter, came into the lounge. She clapped her hands once, gently, and smiled. "Good morning, everyone," she said. "I have some news. Starting tomorrow, we are beginning a special program. 3 days of silence." Some people looked confused. A few chuckled. Mrs. Carter continued. "For 3 days, we will not talk. No phones, no television. We will rest our voices and listen to ourselves, to each other, to the world." A man in the corner, Mr. Dawson, laughed loudly. "Sounds like prison." Some of the residents murmured in agreement. Evelyn said nothing. She closed her book slowly and looked back at the garden. Silence. 3 days of silence. It sounded like nothing new at all. She had been living with silence for a long time. The next morning, the house felt different. No voices in the hallways. No television sounds from behind doors. Only the soft creak of floors and the whisper of slippers on the old wooden stairs. Evelyn woke early. She sat on the edge of her bed, listening. Max, the cat from the hallway, brushed against her legs. Even he was quiet today. At breakfast, the dining room was full but silent. People smiled politely and nodded instead of speaking. Spoons tapped gently against bowls. Cups clicked on saucers. Chairs scratched the floor. Evelyn took her oatmeal and sat by the window, like always. She liked the same seat where she could see the garden. The trees stood still this morning, heavy with dew. Across the room, she noticed Mrs. Langley, a woman with thick white hair and red lipstick. Mrs. Langley usually talked the most, long stories about her children, her garden, her travels. Now Mrs. Langley sat alone, stirring her tea slowly, looking lost. Evelyn lowered her spoon and watched her. Without words, everything looked different. Smiles seemed smaller. Eyes seemed heavier. Movement seemed slower, as if everyone was carrying invisible weights. She didn't feel lonely. She felt aware. Every clink, every breath, every tiny gesture felt louder in the silence. It was not empty. It was full. After breakfast, Evelyn put on her cardigan and walked outside. The garden was almost empty. Only Mr. Dawson sat on a bench near the roses, looking half asleep. The grass was wet and soft under her shoes. The air smelled of earth and old rain. She walked slowly, feeling the cold air on her face. The quietness pressing gently on her skin. Near the big oak tree, she stopped. There was a wooden bench there, a little broken at one side. She sat down carefully. For a long time, she simply sat. No one spoke. No one called her name. No one asked if she was comfortable or needed anything. At first, it felt strange, like being forgotten. Then it felt peaceful. Evelyn closed her eyes. Memories floated up, light and soft, like leaves falling. A boy running across a green field, waving a paper kite. Her husband's hand, warm and firm, holding hers at the train station. The smell of fresh bread on Saturday mornings when she baked for her son. Small things, simple things, things she thought she had lost. But in the silence, they came back. Not as pain, as something real, still living inside her. She opened her eyes and saw the world differently. The trees weren't just trees. The wind wasn't just cold air. Everything spoke without words. And maybe she could learn to do the same. The second day was harder. Evelyn woke up feeling heavy, as if the silence had settled inside her body. In the hallway, she passed Mrs. Langley again. Mrs. Langley smiled tightly and quickly looked away. Her lipstick was smudged, and her hands shook slightly. At lunch, the dining room felt colder. People didn't smile as much. Some stared at their plates. Others looked at the windows, at the trees, anywhere but at each other. The weight of unspoken words hung in the air. Later, Evelyn walked through the halls. She heard small sounds behind closed doors, a quiet sob, a deep sigh, the rustle of paper. She knew the sounds of sadness. She had lived with them before. She went back to the garden. The bench under the oak tree was wet from morning dew, so she stayed standing. A wind picked up, lifting the fallen leaves in short, nervous bursts. Evelyn closed her eyes and remembered the last real conversation she had with her son. It had been years ago. He had called late at night, angry, tired. He had said words she tried to forget. She had answered with silence. She thought silence would protect them both. But now she saw it differently. Silence was not always kindness. Sometimes silence was fear. She opened her eyes and felt something shift inside her. Not painful, not easy, but necessary. She stood there for a long time, letting the cold bite her cheeks, letting the world turn quietly around her. Maybe silence wasn't an end. Maybe it was a beginning. The third morning was colder. Frost touched the windows, and the garden was white with thin ice. Inside, the house was still silent, but something had changed. People moved more carefully now, as if the silence had become a part of them. There were fewer nervous smiles, fewer restless glances. Something softer filled the space between them, a kind of quiet understanding. Evelyn wrapped herself in her thickest sweater and went outside. The bench under the oak was covered in frost, sparkling like tiny stars. She didn't sit. She stood with her hands deep in her pockets, breathing in the sharp, clean air. In her right pocket, her fingers touched something, a small piece of folded paper. It was a note she had written the night before. Not long, just a few words. She had written it for herself, or maybe for her son, or maybe for no one at all. She unfolded the paper carefully. I love you. I miss you. I'm still here. She read it once, then folded it again and placed it gently on the empty bench. A small offering to the silence. A small truth spoken without a voice. She stood there for a while, watching the wind play with the leaves. Then she smiled, a small, real smile. The experiment would end tomorrow. The talking would return. Phones, televisions, laughter, complaints. But something inside her had already changed. Evelyn turned and walked back to the house, lighter than she had felt in years. The fourth morning came with golden light. The frost was gone, and the garden shone with soft mist. Birds sang, small, bright notes that sounded louder after so many silent days. Inside the house, people spoke again. Quiet greetings floated through the halls. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Lovely weather today. The world was noisy once more, but softer, too. Evelyn sat at her usual place by the window. Her tea steamed gently in her cup. Mrs. Langley passed by with a tray. She stopped and smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her tired eyes. Evelyn smiled back and lifted her hand in a small wave. No words were needed. Later, Evelyn walked to the garden. The bench under the oak was empty. A note she had left was gone, carried away by the wind, or maybe picked up by someone else. She didn't mind. The important part had already happened. She stood there for a moment, breathing in the cool, sweet air. Then she turned and walked back inside, ready at last to speak again. Not to forget the silence, but to remember what it taught her.